I'm in chapter 33, and I'm reading verses 1 through 11. Will you hear this beautiful, beautiful word? Now, Jacob looked up and saw Esau coming, and 400 men with him. So he divided the children among Leah and Rachel and the two maids. He put the maids with their children in front, then Leah with her children, and Rachel and Joseph last of all. He himself went on ahead of them, bowing himself to the ground 7 times until he came near his brother. But Esau ran to meet him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him, and they wept. When Esau looked up and saw the women and children, he said, "Whose are these with you?" Jacob said, "The children whom God has graciously given your servant." Then the maids drew near, they and their children, and bowed down. Leah likewise with her children drew near and bowed down, and finally Joseph and Rachel drew near, and they bowed down. Esau said, "What do you mean by all this company I met?" Jacob answered, "To find favor with you, my lord." But Esau said, "I have enough, my brother. Keep what you have for yourself." Jacob said, "No, please, if I find favor with you, then accept my present from my hand, for truly to see your face is like seeing the grace of God, the face of God. Since you have received me with such favor, please accept my gift that is brought to you, because God has dealt graciously with me, and because I have everything I want." So Jacob urged Esau, and he took it. May God add God's blessing to the hearing of this word. Most holy God, speak to us this day through this beautiful story. Remind us who and whose we are. In Christ's name, amen. Well, I got a little choked up reading that story, although I've read it many, many times before. But for me, this reunion between Esau and Jacob is one of the most beautiful events recorded in Scripture. A few weeks ago, we talked about the conflict that existed between these two brothers, and this is the story of how that conflict finally came to an end. Remember that Esau and Jacob are twins. Esau's the oldest by only a few moments, but those few moments earned him the gift of the birthright of the firstborn son. When those boys grew up, Jacob stole Esau's birthright, and if that wasn't bad enough, he later stole their father's blessing from Esau. At that point, Esau was so filled with rage that he vowed he would kill his brother Jacob, and so Jacob ran away from home. And that's the conflict that existed between them. And that conflict story comes to an end with Jacob running away from home. He was gone for 20 years. For 20 years. And Scripture doesn't mention if he ever once thought about his brother during all that time. The story doesn't say if he ever felt the least bit remorseful, if he ever repented for the things that he did against his brother. What the story does tell us is that Jacob grew exceedingly wealthy while he was away from home. While he was hiding out from his enemy brother, Jacob married 2 wives, and then he took 2 concubines. He became the father of a daughter and 11 sons. It would eventually become 12 sons, but in that 20-year span, had a daughter and 11 sons. He acquired this large herd of cattle, a very large flock of goats, a large flock of sheep. He had camels, he had donkeys. 20 years of amassing this great fortune, God told Jacob it was time to go home. Of course, there was a small problem with going home, right? Esau was there. Esau, whom he had tricked out of his birthright. Esau, who hated him. Esau, who vowed to kill him. And yet, still, Jacob gathered up all his wives and all his children and all his cattle, his goats, his sheep, his camels, his donkey, so he could go home, because that's what God told him to do. But probably very wisely, Jacob decided if he wasn't going to be killed along the way, he needed to take some precautions. He needed to do something to protect himself and his family against his angry brother. So Jacob sent out some men as messengers with this message: "Tell my lord Esau, your servant Jacob is coming home with great wealth, and he's hoping to find favor with you." Translation: I'm on my way home. I am a very wealthy man. I will share what I have with you as long as you don't kill me. So the men went out with that message. Then they came back to Jacob. When they came back to Jacob, they reported to him that Esau was on his way to meet Jacob with 400 men. He's coming with 400 men, and that was horrible news, because this person who promised to kill him was now on his way to Jacob with a small army. What to do? What would you do? Well, here's what Jacob did. First, he divided all the people who were with him and all the animals that were with him into two groups. You heard me read this portion of the story. He divided them into two groups. So if Esau and his men attacked the first group, that second group might be able to escape. And then in addition to creating this diversion, Jacob also sent Esau a gift, 550 animals from his own herd, because he hoped that this grand gesture was going to appease his brother's wrath. But you heard what happened when Esau and Jacob met. Esau didn't want his brother's gift. He just wanted his brother. He just wanted his brother. Before Jacob ever headed his way, you see, Esau decided to put their past behind them. He rushed out to meet his betrayer, not to attack him, but to forgive him and to welcome him home. He went out to meet Jacob with open arms full of love, and as soon as they were close enough, the text says, in this translation, Esau fell on Jacob's neck. I love that. I love that imagery. This is way more than just a hug. It is actually a complete surrender to the grace of forgiveness. That's what it is. A complete surrender to the grace of forgiveness. Esau kissed his brother, and they both wept while all of that bad stuff just melted away. Jacob said to Esau, "Seeing your face is like seeing the face of God." It's just a beautiful story. Truly beautiful story. I heard another story about brothers this week. A true story. It was told by Jonathan Goldstein on a podcast I listened to called This American Life. These two brothers, Buzz and Sheldon, just like Jacob and Esau, had a very rocky relationship, and for 20 years, they did not see each other. During the course of their life, a great many things transpired between them, but the trouble really began when they were just children. The boys grew up with a very abusive father. And one night, when Buzz was only 4 years old and Sheldon was just 9, their father beat their mother up so badly, she decided that she finally had to leave. And so she did. But she came back a few days later with the police. She came back with the police, not to have the father arrested, but to take her eldest son, Sheldon, with her. He didn't go. He didn't go. But Mother never made any attempt to take little 4-year-old Buzz. And it broke his heart. And that heartbreak lived within him for the next 76 years. He just couldn't understand why his mother didn't want him to. Why she loved Sheldon more than she loved him. That anguish, as you might imagine, continued to grow and grow until it formed this deep resentment, and with every passing year, those brothers grew further and further apart until they had no relationship left. It was like they had never been brothers. But when Buzz was 80 years old and Sheldon was 85, Buzz's son, Jonathan, who tells this story, the son arranged for those two brothers to meet. And he very wisely guided their conversation until they were able to come to a truth. You see, their father used to beat Sheldon and abuse him terribly, but he didn't treat Buzz the same way. He wasn't as abusive with Buzz. And those two grown men sit down together and they remember together the painful malice that Sheldon endured as a child and up into his adulthood. And as they did that, their mother's action became a little more palatable. She didn't go back for Sheldon because he was her favorite. She went back because she feared for his life. And with that knowledge, after decades of anger, these two brothers were finally able to understand their past and to make amends with each other. Now, their reunion was not nearly as demonstrative as Jacob's reunion with Esau. There was no falling on one another's neck. There was no embrace of surrender. There was no kiss. There were no tears. It was actually a pretty hard-won reconciliation. But nonetheless, it was a reconciliation. And I want to add that their lack of emotional display probably much better depicts for us our own human struggle with forgiveness. This is a painfully difficult work for us. And more often than not, we are reluctant to repair what has been torn asunder. Personal confession. I was betrayed and lied to by the same person for almost 2 decades. This was not my ex-husband, and I don't want to leave the impression that it was, because he doesn't deserve that. This was another individual, another relationship, and it left some pretty deep scars with me. So I have to confess that getting to a place of forgiveness with this individual still leaves me feeling pretty cold. Pretty cold. You know, like if I forgive you, does that excuse your behavior? Does it negate what has been done? And maybe I shouldn't make that confession to you as your pastor, but I want you to understand I'm not above you in any way. We all face these same struggles, and this one is very real for me. In truth, we all get so hung up in our own emotional baggage that forgiving other people can be torturous. And most often, church, that is because we can't get to a place of forgiving our own self. But you know what? God doesn't have issues with forgiveness. God doesn't have emotional baggage. God doesn't hold on to those past hurts like we are so inclined to do. God doesn't carry a grudge or get bound up in resentment. Nor does God hold on to the anger and harbor the anger that we won't let go of. God's loving nature gives birth to reconciliation. We have made this gift of forgiveness very complicated, but God sees with perfect clarity what you and I tend to make muddy. Esau forgave Jacob in a way that seems unnatural for most of us. All Jacob had to do was head for home, and his brother immediately was ready to fall on his neck. He wasn't keeping records of wrong throughout all of those years that the brothers were separated. He didn't even ask Jacob for a formal apology. Did you notice that? How many times do we say, well, I would forgive so-and-so if so-and-so would apologize? Esau didn't even ask for an apology. And it was so unlike our typical human behavior that when Jacob saw his brother's face, it was truly like seeing the face of God, because the forgiveness that Esau surrendered to, the reconciliation he offered to Jacob, was divine in every sense of the word. I wonder this morning if you might be willing to hear something. I mean, you're here with your mask on, you might as well listen, right? I'm wondering though if you might be willing to hear something and let it sink into your heart and then begin to take root there. I'm wondering if you will hear this. God is not angry with you. God isn't angry with you. We say we believe that, but we don't really live our lives as though we do. I know so many people who in a variety of ways are trying to win the favor of God. But know this, God doesn't want your gifts. God wants you. God wants you. Before you ever started out towards home, God set out to meet you, not to attack you, but to fall on your neck, to kiss your face, to assure you that all is forgiven. You are forgiven. What a burden it would lift if we truly believed that. What freedom we would find. what genuine love we would be able to express to each other and to God if we didn't insist, like Jacob does at the end of the story, that a gift has to be exchanged, that we have to make some extravagant gesture if we're going to receive what God has given. Nowhere is this grace of forgiveness more apparent, and nowhere is the face of God more plainly seen than in the crucified Christ. The surrender of Jesus is a revelation of God falling on our neck in complete surrender to forgiveness. And I'm not getting my words mixed up here. I know what I'm saying. I'm talking about God surrendering to forgiveness. And the revelation of God in Christ is that God is falling on your neck in surrender to forgiveness with no cost to you. I wonder if we will ever be able to truly comprehend that. I wonder if we will ever really be able to let it sink in. If it does sink in, then we would finally be able to forgive ourselves. We'd finally be able to forgive each other. And church, that would be like coming home. It'd be like coming home to the kingdom of God.